My best friend and boyfriend betrayed me by getting together right before college. Years later, I exposed their infidelity for revenge, but the friendship was already over. This all took place when I was 19. I'm 27 now, and I've mostly kept it to myself, only sharing with a few close friends. Hardly anyone knows the full story or the reason I ended things with my former best friend. I felt so embarrassed and heartbroken back then that I couldn't bring myself to talk about it, and I haven't spoken about it since. But recently, I've felt this overwhelming urge to finally get it off my chest after all these years. So here goes. It's a long one. When I was 19, my boyfriend, who was 22 at the time, got caught cheating on me with my best friend, who was 18. I met my best friend, let's call her Rachel, back in the second grade. We hit it off right away. Her parents were busy running a business and didn't really keep track of where she was or what she was doing. So she spent a lot of time at my house from a young age, and my parents ended up taking on a more parental role for her than her own folks did. I was an only child, and with my parents being so welcoming and having a big house, Rachel basically lived with us every summer. My dad would even take her to softball signups every year, covering her fees and uniforms so she could be on my team. She came on every vacation with us, joined us for dinners out, and my mom would take her back to school shopping. As we got older, my dad even paid off a hefty speeding ticket she got. We were inseparable. By our senior year of high school, I had met a guy at a football game from another school. Let's call him Jake. He was a couple of years older, and we hit it off instantly, exchanging numbers right there. The next week, Jake asked me out on a date, and we went to Red Lobster and saw a movie. Before long, we were officially dating, and I was thrilled. I had this cute older guy to call my boyfriend during my senior year, which felt pretty exciting. At first, Rachel was excited for me too, until she realized that having a boyfriend meant I'd be spending less time with her. I didn't push her aside. I still made sure to prioritize time with her, although Jake wasn't too happy about it. It soon became a bit of a tug of war for my attention. They seemed to develop a mutual dislike, or at least that's what I thought at the time. As the year went on, things seemed to settle into a decent balance, though I almost never hung out with both of them together. After Rachel and I graduated in June, we planned to move into our college dorm together in August. That summer, Jake started getting more protective, frequently bringing up how things might change once I was living on campus and he wasn't. My college was only 20 minutes away from his place, so I wasn't too concerned and figured we'd make it work. Fast forward to August 8th, my birthday, just 2 weeks before Rachel and I were set to head off to college. Rachel, another friend, and I had tickets to a Panic at the disco concert. It was our favorite band, and the ticket was her birthday gift to me. As it got closer to time to leave, Rachel was nowhere to be found. This wasn't entirely unusual for her. She loved using dating apps and often disappeared on weekends with random guys. While my other friend and I were a bit worried, we decided to go to the concert anyway. It was my birthday, and we were pumped to see our favorite band. We had a blast and went home afterward. The next morning, I still hadn't heard from Rachel, so I decided to check in with her sister, who said she hadn't heard from her either but would let me know when she did. I went about my day since Jake had planned a birthday date for us. During the date, I mentioned how worried I was that I hadn't heard from Rachel in nearly 2 days. He laughed it off, saying she'd probably run off with one of her boyfriends again. I assumed we'd go back to his place afterward, but he told me he'd just drop me off at home because he had to be up early for work. That struck me as odd, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. The next morning, Rachel's sister still hadn't heard from her, and now she was starting to get worried. The weekend was over, and it was time for Rachel to come back home. She texted her, saying that if she didn't respond soon, she'd tell their parents and report her as a missing person. Finally, Rachel sent her sister a picture of herself lying on some guy's chest. At this point, I was getting frustrated and angry. I couldn't understand why Rachel wouldn't call or text me back. I just wanted to know she was okay. Even after sending that picture, we didn't hear from her for hours. So, her sister and I decided to meet up at their parents' business to figure out where Rachel had gone. Her sister showed me the photo, and although you could barely see the guy's chest, I knew instantly it was Jake's. I didn't need to see his face to recognize him. I called Jake right away to confront him about the picture, but my call didn't go through. I was blocked. At that moment, I was overwhelmed with a mix of rage, confusion, and heartbreak. I never, not even for a second, imagined this could happen. I put Rachel's sister in my car, and we drove straight to Jake's house. And there, parked right out front, was Rachel's car. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even go inside. Instead, I took a picture of her car and sent it to Rachel. Her response was the most gut-wrenching thing I'd ever read. She said she and Jake were in love, that he was breaking up with me, and that she was moving in with him. She even suggested I find a new roommate for college, which was set to start in less than 10 days. I drove Rachel's sister back home, feeling completely shattered. I went to my parents' house, gathered up all of Rachel's things that were still there, and returned them to her parents' place. For the next couple of days, I just cried and screamed, feeling the pain of losing both my lifelong best friend and my boyfriend on the same day. The betrayal was unbearable. I didn't tell my parents or most of my other friends. The only ones who knew were those directly involved. Then I realized I needed to get my act together and make sure I wouldn't have to live with Rachel at university. I found a Facebook group for the incoming freshman class and managed to find a new roommate. The next week was a whirlwind of making all the necessary changes at the university. Once college started, everything changed. I loved my new school, loved the freedom, and my new roommate was amazing. I was having the time of my life and had almost managed to put everything that had happened behind me. I finished my first semester and came back home for winter break in early December. A few days into winter break, I got a text from Jake. He said he missed me and wanted to meet up to talk about everything that had gone down. I ignored the message for several days, but something inside me shifted, and I decided to meet him. We met at a local park in a secluded area, and he told me Rachel had no idea he was meeting me. 10 minutes into our conversation, he tried to kiss me. I got angry, and he backed off. We talked a bit more, and it became clear he wasn't there to discuss anything. He was hoping for some kind of hookup. I decided to set my phone up secretly, and before long, things escalated. He was on top of me, kissing me, and started to take his pants off. I pushed him away, jumped out of his truck, and drove off, all while my phone recorded the whole encounter. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing things weren't working out between him and Rachel, like I'd gotten some small piece of revenge, even though I was disgusted with myself for kissing him. I thought about sending the video to Rachel, but I decided against it. A week went by, and the knowledge that I had this video started to eat at me. I didn't want any more drama, but deep down, I wanted Rachel to see what kind of guy he really was. I still talked to her sister occasionally, and she mentioned how upset she was that Rachel planned to bring Jake to Christmas dinner to introduce him to the family. Rachel had never introduced a guy to her family before, and it cut deep. I felt all those painful emotions rush back, and I craved revenge. So, on Christmas Eve, I put Jake, Rachel, and her sister in a group text and sent them the video. What followed was chaos. Jake went ballistic, sending threats to both of us. Rachel broke up with him right then and there on Christmas, but he acted like he wouldn't take no for an answer. Even after everything, I couldn't just leave her in that mess. I drove her to Jake's place, helped her gather all her things, and brought her back to her parents' house. She told me how abusive he'd been, and how ending our friendship was her biggest regret. She cried, saying she'd been miserable every day since hurting me and just wanted to go back to how things used to be. She was devastated over what she had done, and how it ruined our friendship and college plans. I chose to forgive her. We stayed friends for about a year after that, but it was never the same. Deep down, I always felt foolish for forgiving her, and eventually I told her I didn't want to be friends anymore. We haven't spoken since. Even now, my parents occasionally ask what happened to her and why we stopped being friends. They still don't know what she did to me. Hardly anyone does. I've never even told my current partner of nearly 7 years this story. To this day, Jake still tries to reach out to me from fake numbers, despite being married now. I don't know why this has been weighing on my mind so heavily lately, but I'm grateful to anyone who's taken the time to read this. I just needed to get it out of my system. That betrayal is something that will stay with me forever.